Welcome to the King's Report for April 11th, 2018, 9th year of Cheongi, the second month and the 26th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder and Greg Knoll sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
And right now in the Cheongguk Palace area, it's 23 degrees with some clouds. And this morning, before the sun rose, it was really beautiful. Could see lots of stars.
Crescent moon.
Crescent moon?
Beautiful.
Well,
I don't know if you
yes,
saw the moon,
we're getting close to the new moon now, so the crescent is pretty small.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I don't remember seeing a moon actually. I don't know what time I was. You and I were maybe looking at it at different times here.
I was over by the palace this morning.
Oh, you were over by the palace. Yeah. I see. Okay.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Great. Going up to 49 degrees today, mostly sunny, and back down to 33 degrees tonight. And tomorrow going up to 58 degrees, mostly cloudy and a little rain. And then Friday and Saturday, we're going to get into the 70s.
Awesome. I think we're waiting for that.
So turns out the rumors are true. Spring is, in fact, coming.
Spring has flung.
Yes, 75 on Friday is predicted, and 77 on Saturday, getting close to 80 there.
Amazing.
But then back down to the 50s on Sunday. So we're going to have a big drop in temperature between Saturday and Sunday. Also some rain and drizzle on Sunday. Now notice that next week.
A lot of rain next week, right?
Well, there's a strange word in the forecast for next week. I don't know what it means. It says flurries. That couldn't possibly mean what I think it might mean.
I'm from Syracuse, and we would get snow in May. That was quite common.
On Tuesday, flurries possible in the AM, it says. I have no idea what kind of flurries they're talking about. Maybe petals of flowers, flurrying around. I don't know. Let's wait until Tuesday to see what it is.
It was beautiful the other morning, wasn't it, though? It was like...
yesterday morning?
Was it yesterday morning? Yeah. We came into the palace. It was like snow blossoms.
Exactly. I was driving down the interstate yesterday.
Yeah.
And I looked over, and I see all these flowers on these trees.
Right.
And I thought, wow.
White blossoms.
White blossoms, yes. I thought it was. Yeah. I thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I'm watching the road, all right? But as much as I could, I looked over and it turns out it wasn't blossoms. It was snow.
Well, instead of the cherry blossom festival, we can have the snow blossom
festival. Yes. But it was beautiful. It reminded me of the cherry blossoms, yes, because all these trees had what looked like flowers.
It was incredible, and it was all gone by
someone who was driving and trying to keep his eye on the road. It looked like flowers. Yeah, it was really quite beautiful.
It was just a brief moment, so you had to be awake at that hour. Otherwise, it was gone by early morning. It was nice.
Yeah, but driving back from the King's Report yesterday, I had that experience.
Oh, driving back.
Okay. Yeah. So in the higher elevation areas, it lasted a little longer because in the Poconos, different things happen at different elevations. That's the one thing we have here. Okay, let's go ahead and do our rimas. I always, if I once we get involved in the news, then I forget about the rimas. So let's do that first. Romans 8:15. For ye have not received. I'm going to go ahead and read this version here, right out of the Patriot Bible. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. And my Cheonseonggyeong Rima is similar, so I want to go ahead and read that too. Chapter 1 on the true God, book 1 that is, book 1 True God, chapter 1 and section 4, God is our Father. God and human beings are related as I've said before, we really made a mistake in translating puja as a parent and child, whereas clearly it means a father and son. We were trying to be politically correct, but as a result, a lot of misunderstanding has occurred among English-speaking blessed families, and really sorry for that. But here again, God and human beings are related as parent and child. And this section of the Cheonseonggyeong I did translate, or at least I prepared the original manuscript of this section. So this is my fault here. God and human beings are related as parent and child, but actually father and son, as any, or at least father and child, but not parent and child, because pu clearly means father. But how did this relationship come to be? If you enter a mystical state and ask what the center of the universe is, you will get the answer that it is the father-son relationship, is the correct translation. What is the center of the universe? In short, it is the father-son relationship. And this is important, that it is the father-son relationship. If you pray and ask, what is the center, the next, let's see if I can get the next one here. It's not allowing me to. My screen here is frozen, won't allow me to go down to the next paragraph. Anyway, it says, what is the center of the heaven and earth, and what is the root of the universe? He will say that it is the father-son relationship. I'm having trouble this morning with my electronic edition.
Text.
I could read it from the Korean text, yes, which I already did. Oh, see. If you pray to God, ask what is the root of the universe, it says, what is the foundation of the universe? And he says, it is the relationship between a father and his sons and daughters. See, there, father puts in daughters there. But then, comma, it's the father-son relationship. If you don't know this, people who don't know this, I think that this refers to the relationship between the physical father and mother and their sons and daughters. But that's not true. This refers to the fundamental relationship between God and us. All right. So those are our rimas this morning. And as we approach Parents' Day on Monday, it's very important because Parents' Day actually celebrates the time when there came to be true parents on earth, and that. As Paul says, Paul says that it's great because we've not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, as we're no longer servants, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. But adoption, an adopted child has a different lineage, and so it's still not the lineage that God wanted to pass on through Adam and Eve. It's not God's lineage.
Yeah, and
anytime you want.
That's the remarkable grace of the Lord of the Second Advent that brings about the transformation of lineage through the blessing ceremony, and that is something each day we should reflect upon.
Yes, as a result of that, it became possible for us to go through a change of lineage
through the 3-day ceremony
through the process. There was a process. There's the holy wine ceremony. There's the blessing, and there's the 40-day separation, and then there's the indemnity stick.
Chastening ceremony.
Chastening stick, is that what it's called now? But again, let's be true to that. Let's get the translation. Tanggambong is the
what's that
means
translate?
Indemnity stick.
Indemnity stick. Okay.
You can call it chastening ceremony if you want, but it's the indemnity stick.
Let's call it a bat.
And the 3-day ceremony. And people who receive the blessing, need to understand that this is not just a marriage ceremony.
Yeah.
It's more than a marriage ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
This is a salvation ceremony. It's a change of blood lineage ceremony. If someone is drowning and you save them, that means you bring them back to where they were, to the status quo of where they were before they went into the water, right? You have to bring them back on land.
Yeah.
You can't just bring them up so their head is out of water and say, okay, I'm finished. I've saved you. No, they're not saved until you've brought them back onto the land. And so we are not saved until we are able to return to the state where Adam and Eve were before the fall, which means that we have to have God's lineage. So, and Paul is actually pointing out that this is why I think, Paul knew more about lineage than he lets on. Because here again, he talks about we have received the spirit of adoption. So he's pointing out, actually, that our salvation is not complete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, that the lineage still comes from a stained lineage.
That we still have the wrong lineage.
Right, the seed is corrupt.
Yes. God has taken us in like, someone adopts a child. You take a child into your family and you raise them as if that he's your child, and you love that child, and he calls you father, mother, and everything like that. But the lineage is different. Right? And so also here, Paul is actually pointing out that salvation through Jesus is not complete.
And that was really Father's fundamental mission, was to bring salvation through the blessing.
Yes.
Above all, everything else that Father miraculously did in his 90-plus years of life, the fundamental core was to defeat Satan and to establish the pure blood lineage of heaven, of God.
Which is why Satan attacked that lineage so fiercely in 2013. Satan wanted to undo everything that Father had done during his lifetime. And so he attacked the Word, and he attacked the blessed families. And through the false foundation day in February 2013, he took back almost all blessed families. Some blessed families didn't get the Word in some areas of the world, actually, we're finding, and so they were saved. But essentially, he took back pretty much all of the blessed families that Father had been able to create during his lifetime. But fortunately, the second king was able to reestablish that connection with Father and give us an opportunity, in a way, to return to true Father's authority.
Yeah, and just as your rhema this morning, it's that father-son relationship that is critical for the lineage, the passing on of the seed. There's nothing more precious than that father-son relationship, which is so beautifully depicted in that painting that we show with the three kingships and the brides of Christ bowing to the lineage.
I'm not sure if the viewers are seeing that painting right
probably
now.
Probably not, but probably most people are familiar with that three kingship painting.
It's shown at our services, isn't it? Yes.
Right.
So, and that is the day that we are celebrating on Monday. It'll be the 59th True Parents Day that we celebrate on Monday. We're preparing for right now. And I think right now, probably a time for us all to reflect on that and to prepare our hearts for that celebration.
Yeah. Salvation.
Yeah.
I think that's a fundamental point that was missed by a lot of us, is the salvation work of true parents. And even the salvation work of Jesus. Our understanding of salvation through the cross and salvation through the blessing, I think, is something we would all do well to reflect upon as we approach this day.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the news. Let's not take a break since we don't have so much time today. Got lots of news going on, and especially worried this morning, as I was yesterday, about what's happening in Syria. All this Zuckerberg at the, Mueller, all that can wait. Let's talk about Syria first. Right now, the situation is developing further towards a possibility of a military confrontation between the United States and its allies against Russia and perhaps others. Right now, there's a report that British and French missiles may strike Syria within 72 hours. The Eurocontrol, which controls civilian aircraft, is telling airlines not to fly over Syria because there could be a military action there in the next few days. Let's look at a story in the Express. The British papers are reporting this much more than the U.S. papers. U.S. papers are so busy with Zuckerberg that they're, I think, ignoring this. The Express says Syria missile strike within hours. RAF, that's the Royal Air Force of the UK, on alert for possible launch. British and French forces could launch an imminent missile strike on Syria within a matter of hours. Aviation monitors have revealed a coalition force could fire air-to-ground or cruise missiles in the wake of a horrifying chemical attack on innocent civilians in Syria last week. Aviation experts AirLive have reported a rapid alert notification warning aircraft in the eastern Mediterranean to be wary of a sudden missile strike. AirLive said the alert was issued by Eurocontrol for a possible launch within the next 72 hours. AirLive said, according to reports, British forces are mobilizing at their bases in Cyprus, and Rafale fighter jets could take off from Saint Dizier Air Base in France for possible strikes against Syria. The Eurocontrol alert said due to the possible launch of airstrikes into Syria with air-to-ground and or cruise missiles within the next 72 hours and the possibility of intermittent disruptions of radio navigation equipment due consideration needs to be taken when planning flight operations in the eastern Mediterranean, Nicosia FIR area. The UK has said military intervention is a possibility following the chemical attack in Douma. Syrian opposition activists and rescuers said poison gas was used on the rebel-held town near capital, an allegation strongly denied by the Assad government. So we have that, and they go on to talking about the chemical attack, which we really don't know who perpetrated that. It really is hard to understand why the Syrian government, why Assad's government would perform a chemical attack at a time when pretty much they had won the war. And President Trump was talking about pulling troops out. And it's interesting that this attack now has completely changed the flow of events. You know, it was going in a direction where President Trump was talking, okay, you know, we'll be able to pull our troops out in the not too distant future, and you know, things are pretty much winding down in Syria. And all of a sudden, things take a sharp turn to the point now where the flow is actually towards a much greater involvement by the United States. And this is not something that the Syrian government would want, but it's something that was easily predictable as a result of a chemical attack on a place like Douma, on a rebel-held territory. So it seems logical to think that someone wanted the United States to stay in Syria. Who would that be? It's not Russia. It's not the Assad government. They don't want the United States to remain in Syria. Russia would like the United States to get out of Syria. Russia already has a large military presence in Syria, and Syria is their longtime ally. So they would want the U.S. to get out, and Assad also would want the U.S. to get out as soon as possible. So who is it that wants the United States to remain engaged in Syria? I think that's the question that we have to ask. And certainly there are, globalists, there are people who want that. And also, this is now clearly developing towards a military confrontation between the United States and Russia. So, and that was also an easily predictable result of this kind of an attack. So, again, who is trying to create, who would want a military confrontation between the United States and Russia? Not Russia. We can be sure of that. Seems that there are people, probably within the administration, within the U.S. military-industrial complex, who want this to happen, and somehow, I don't know how, I don't know who exactly, but somebody is doing something here, and I don't think it was the Assad government. It seems difficult to understand that logic that this was the Assad government.
I think, as tragic as this chemical attack is, why is there a rush to judgment one way or another? I think it's prudent before we spend millions and possibly billions of dollars and drawing in becoming an international conflict. Why not take some time and investigate this bombing and try to get to the bottom of it rather than rushing to judgment? It clearly smells like a false flag of sorts. It's not. It doesn't make any sense that Assad would do this in an hour of victory, just hours away. Right. So to me, it's like, why are we even there? Why are we? I'm a little bit like Rand Paul on on these issues. Why are we there to begin with? Why are we putting our soldiers in harm's way? Why are we spending billions of dollars, and especially in an area that's already winding down, where the conflict has pretty much, resolved itself to some extent? And yes, this is a tragedy, but let's not make it a bigger tragedy. Let's not escalate this into something that we're going to regret. Wasn't the previous chemical attack also found to be not as they thought? I think it was Mattis said, there was no real conclusive proof that the Assad government was involved. So I think this is just a repeat of something in the recent history that we're seeing all over again.
Another British paper, Mirror, has an article headlined, "Russia will shoot down U.S. missiles fired at Syria and target launch sites," warns ambassador. This is the Russian ambassador to Lebanon. So this is what we need to really be concerned about, that this could turn into a military confrontation. In other words, a military, actually, let's call it a war between the United States and Russia. And that's how this could develop into a world war. Because if the U.S. and Russia get involved in the war, then U.S. Forces will be forced to focus on the Middle East, and that will create a vacuum in East Asia. China will take advantage of that vacuum, take Taiwan, take the Korean Peninsula, maybe go into Southeast Asia. So this is how world wars get started.
And a lot of times they're distractions from things happening at home, and that's my fear. Is President Trump and maybe other people in England and the UK trying to distract their citizens from other controversial issues? This is oftentimes why conflicts are started, is to distract people from other things that are plaguing presidents and prime ministers.
Well, we don't want a world war to start, but right now, U.S. missiles fired at Syria will be shot down, and launch sites targeted, the Russian ambassador warned today. The measure is threatened by Alexander Zaspkin, Russia's ambassador to Lebanon, could trigger a major escalation in the Syrian conflict. Yes. So if Tomahawk missiles are fired from U.S. naval vessels in the eastern Mediterranean, what he's saying is that Russia may bomb those U.S. naval vessels. And think about it. What would happen if Russia were to sink a U.S. naval vessel? That would be a major escalation and something that could trigger a wider war between the United States and Russia. In comments broadcast on Tuesday evening, he said he was referring to a statement by Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Russian Armed Forces Chief of Staff. The Russian military said on March 13 that it would respond to any U.S. strike on Syria, targeting any missiles and launchers involved in such an attack. Russia is Syrian President Bashar Assad's most powerful ally. The United States and its allies are considering whether to hit Syria over a suspected poison gas attack. Medical relief organizations, that is rebel or ISIS-connected medical relief organizations, say killed dozens of people in the rebel-held town of Douma near Damascus on Saturday. If there's a strike by the Americans, then the missiles will be downed, and even the sources from which the missiles were fired. Zasipkin told Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV, speaking in Arabic. He also said a clash should be ruled out, and therefore we are ready to hold negotiations. Russia and the United States blocked attempts by each other in the UN Security Council on Tuesday to set up an international investigation into the chemical weapons attacks in Syria. So the efforts to investigate that chemical attack was blocked in the UN. The U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday canceled a planned trip to Latin America later this week to focus instead on responding to the Syrian incident. The White House said Trump had on Monday warned of a quick, forceful response once responsibility for the Syrian attack was established. Meanwhile, Russian military chiefs released a video showing the country's missile defense systems. The video made by Russia's Ministry of Defense to celebrate Russia's Air Defense Day shows millions of pounds worth of missile hardware being fired in live testing. Images of missiles being launched from underground silos and mobile launch platforms are accompanied by massive explosions. Experts have noted that the weapons on show include the S-400 missile system, the S-300 missile system, as well as a short to medium range surface-to-air missile, the Panzer S-1. So things are heating up. Things are heating up. Russia is giving a clear warning to the United States, and we hope that that this does not continue to develop in the direction that it's going now. As Trump considers a military action on Syria, this is the LA Times, Pentagon worries it could put Russian soldiers in the crosshairs. Let's see here. The LA Times all of a sudden wants me to subscribe. See if I can get around this. Okay. As Pentagon planners ready a possible military response to a suspected poison gas attack in Syria, one danger has sparked special concern: whether U.S. airstrikes may inadvertently kill Russian soldiers in Syria and escalate the regional war into a confrontation between Washington and Moscow. The chances of a potential clash would increase if President Trump opts for a heavy bombardment, employing not only Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from Navy ships offshore, as he did last year after a previous chemical attack, but also manned bombers and other warplanes to strike multiple targets in Syria, current and former officials say. Although Trump said Monday that he would make a major decision in 24 to 48 hours, the timing of a U.S.-led strike could be delayed by Syria's announcement Tuesday that it will allow international chemical weapons inspectors into the country to investigate Saturday's attack, which left about 50 people dead in the rebel-held town of Douma, as well as by the need for the Pentagon and U.S. allies to get sufficient military forces in place. Trump canceled his planned trip to Colombia and Peru, and that we already know. So let's see. So we need to we'll look at this, but this is something I think all papers should be covering at the top of their sites, but it's not getting such as big coverage, I think, as wide coverage, I think, as it should. And especially the question of who actually did that attack should be investigated by the media much more deeply. Mm-hmm. They need to be sending correspondents there. We don't want to just be relying on the medical organizations whose background is rather shady. We don't want to be, putting thousands and potentially millions of lives at stake on the basis of their information.
And of course, the photographs of children, always invoke an incredible amount of emotion, and we sometimes leave our rational mind behind. I think this is a time to be very cautious and slow in responding.
Yes,
because this is not the first time that a false flag or something of this nature has triggered something. Look what happened in Iraq. It was a huge cost involved, both in human life and in finances and destruction, of people, property, land. So this is could be it shows you how vulnerable our world is right now. Through one false flag could trigger a world war. Mm-hmm. So this is a time where we have to really be thoughtful in our analysis of things.
Paul Joseph Watson has another story on this. He's actually the person I think who's covering this the best of all the journalists. He has another thing out on Infowars.com where he has about a half-hour discussion with a woman whose handle, I guess, is a Syrian girl, and it's a half-hour long. We don't have time to play the whole thing, but it would be good if people went and referred to that. It's a very interesting discussion. But anyway, he points out some of the points he made. The two of them, make some of the points that we've already made, that there was really no motivation for the Syrian government to carry out this kind of an attack, and so forth. And things are happening kind of fast now. Now Trump has come out. Is this a tweet? We just got a new headline on Syria here. Trump threatens Russia, get ready, the missiles are coming. Is this Trump's tweet?
Unbelievable.
Let's see, let me go to the president's Twitter account. Anyway, that's what is this? This is the Daily Star, another British paper, is covering this. Donald Trump has issued a fierce warning to Russia over claims they would shoot down U.S. missiles fired at Syria. Trump tweeted, Russia vows to shoot down any and all missiles fired at Syria. Get ready, Russia, because they will be coming nice and new and smart. You shouldn't be partners with a gas-killing animal who kills his people and enjoys it. The U.S. president's tweet escalates tensions to a new level amid fears of an imminent strike by U.S. forces in Syria. So apparently the president is, at least he tweeted, this is a tweet that came out just 13 minutes ago. The president apparently has decided that Assad did this, and that he's an animal. So he's dehumanizing Assad and connecting Assad with Russia. Russia are allies with dictator Bashar al-Assad and are expected to defend him should the U.S. attack. U.S. warplanes were spotted flying over Syria last night, and destroyer USS Donald Cook is operating in the Mediterranean. Britain and France are being called upon by the U.S. to join any military action against Assad. Dozens of civilians, including children, were killed in the strike on the rebel-held town of Douma. Trump decided to strike Syria last year, launching a blitz of 59 missiles over a chemical attack. So the president seems to be headed in that direction of a not just a surgical attack like he did last year, but a more sort of a large-scale attack involving Britain, France, possibly even Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia said yesterday that they were prepared to participate in a military action against Syria. Well, that's what's going on in Syria. Shall we go to other news?
Yeah,
anything else
so.
you want to
say? Okay. I think we said what we need to say. It just seems ridiculous that we're moving aggressively in this direction at this hour. Yeah.
One thing the Syrian girl who was talking to Paul Joseph Watson said at the end of their half-hour discussion was that, we don't have much power to stop this, but let's do what we can. So let's call the White House, for example. Let's call our congressmen and senators and make our opposition known. That was one thing I think that was very useful. That individually we don't have much power, but perhaps collectively we can have some kind of an influence on this situation and keep the United States from getting involved. I'm sure that the father would not want the United States and would not want Trump to get involved in this situation.
No, this is very much like the Iraq situation.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And Father definitely did not want that. And I can hear Father saying now. I remember hearing him say, "God, war is what God hates the most." Basically, is what he said. War is what God hates the most.
Yeah, the level of destruction that will follow this atrocity of a chemical attack will dwarf this attack because thousands and thousands of people could end up being dead, and more chemical weapons perhaps used. So this is why escalate this into something that's going to be much worse than this attack that just happened.
Okay. But Drudge has just changed his main headline to "Trump warns Putin missiles are coming." That's the tweet that just came out from the president a few minutes ago. Let's look at some of the other headlines this morning. Of course, Zuckerberg was on Capitol Hill yesterday and saying that drudge headlines on that is that Facebook is developing AI to censor speech.
And we're supposed to trust that, right? AI is infallible.
Scientific.
It's God.
Yes.
That's what a lot of people are saying, right? The AI is God.
Senator grills him, saying, "How do you define hate?" A German historian banned for criticizing Islam. A company working with Mueller to probe Trump. Lowry tech giant has always been a big swindle. A montage you don't know will get back to you. We'll get back to you. Zuckerberg not keen to reveal own personal info. See Ted Cruz make Mark squirm. The future is pay for play. He leaves Senate hearing $3 billion richer. Fallout deals blow to Mercer's political clout. Hate speech is basically, and fake news is basically anything that the establishment doesn't agree with or doesn't doesn't approve. And I was remembering during the Korean portion of this broadcast, I was remembering how I was in Korea and I first went there in '78, and that was the final year, actually, of Park Chung-hee's very oppressive dictatorship, 78, 79, and then the sort of the transition that occurred after that to the Fifth Republic under Chun Doo-hwan, which was also a strong military dictatorship. And they had laws against people spreading rumors, what they called false rumors. Mm-hmm. And you could get arrested for doing this. Mm-hmm. Basically, that was fake news. Mm-hmm. And then basically, they were arresting people for spreading information that the government did not approve of. And that's happening now in the United States and in the West.
Yeah. It also happens in China, Cuba.
But this is the characteristic of dictatorships. Yeah. And it's just interesting to me because at that time, the United States was all up in arms about the human rights in South Korea, and they were supporting Kim Dae-jung and letting him go into exile in Boston, of all places. He was in exile in Boston, of all places, for a few years until, 1985, when he was able to return. I remember that because it was the day before my second child was born, and he returned. And I missed my second child's birth because of his return. But anyway, so that is the characteristic of dictatorships. Mark Zuckerberg is optimistic AI tools to flag, remove hate speech on Facebook will be deployed in 5 to 10 years. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg predicted Tuesday will be 5 to 10 years before Facebook has technological tools in place to flag and remove hate speech from the platform. During testimony before the Judiciary and Commerce Committees, John Thune asked what challenges Facebook faces with evaluating hate speech. And he said some problems lend themselves more easily to AI solutions than others. Hate speech is one of the hardest because determining if something is hate speech is very linguistically nuanced. You need to understand what is a slur and whether something is hateful, not just in English, but a majority of people in Facebook use it in languages that are different across the world. Facebook has developed and deployed AI tools to find terrorist propaganda, Zuckerberg said, and nearly all ISIS and Al-Qaeda content that is removed from Facebook is flagged before any human sees it. That's a success in terms of rolling out AI tools that can proactively police and enforce safety across the community, Zuckerberg said. Hate speech, I am optimistic that over a 5 to 10 year period, we'll have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. But today is just not there on that. The Facebook CEO said that by the end of 2018, the company will have 20,000 employees devoted to security and content review. See, these 28,000 employees,
Yeah.
I predict they will come from SPLC.
Yeah,
The Southern
98%
Poverty-
will be of a liberal mindset.
Yes. And if you
Liberal
say,
in a
I
narrow
hate
way.
Republicans, that's not hate speech. But if you say, I hate Democrats, that is hate speech. So let's get into this one with the company. The senator asking him, well, how do you define hate speech? Let's see what he says about that. Drudge continues to change its headlines on the Syrian situation, but nothing new, at least on the headlines. Let's see. Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg grappled with questions of all stripes on Tuesday's Senate hearing on the social media platform in the 2016 election, but it was Nebraska Republican Senator Ben Sass's question about hate speech that should alarm free speech advocates, along with inquiries from Cruz. Sass studied his portion began by acknowledging that companies like Facebook have a hard challenge when it comes to creating their own rules in addition to government regulations. That being said, Sass told him that he acknowledges he had worries about private groups like Zuckerberg being able to make policies that may be less than First Amendment full spirit embracing and go from violent groups to hate speech in a hurry. He then asked the key question, you may decide, or Facebook may decide it needs to police a whole bunch of speech that I think America might be better off by not having policed by one company that has a really large and powerful platform. Can you define hate speech? And let's see, Zuckerberg said, Senator, I think that this is a really hard question. I think it's one of the reasons we struggle with it. There are certain definitions that we have around, calling for violence or, Sass said, let's just agree on that. Yeah. Sass has stepped in to end this cringeworthy response, emphasizing that if somebody's calling for violence, that shouldn't be there. But what he was saying, what he was trying to ask him about concerned the psychological categories around speech. Let's think a little bit about how this could be handled under the Choniku Constitution. Because I think it's wrong categorically that Facebook should be able to censor speech. I think censorship in the Choniku Constitution, Choniku is based on the free market principles, right? So there should be a way in which the free market censors speech, not individuals. What do you think?
Well, I think Facebook, the problem with Facebook, it's a very large company. Mm-hmm. I think if it was a small company, I think a lot of small companies restrict speech, and they have the right to do that because it's a company, and they can dictate what they want on their site and what they don't want on their site. The problem with Facebook, it's become ubiquitous. It's part of our everyday life now. It's part of our social fabric. So in one sense, it's the Freedom of Information Act that's in our government, our Constitution, our way of life. So now they're in a position where it's really the free exchange of ideas platform on a global scale almost. So it seems like they're in a different situation now. But I think, the free market response would be to create another platform where ideas are not censored. Mm-hmm. And then people would migrate to that. But the problem is there's really no competition. In fact, yes. I think they asked Zuckerberg, name some of your competitors. Okay. And he couldn't.
He couldn't, yes.
He doesn't have any competitors.
He doesn't have any competitors.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
But he also said it doesn't feel like a monopoly.
It doesn't feel like a monopoly. If that was the case, he could rattle off 3 or 4 competitors. But
Facebook has a lot of good uses.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I first got into Facebook to keep track of what my kids were doing.
Right.
As one tool, because they were not very careful about their personal information, frankly.
Right. In the early days.
In the early days, yes.
Right.
And even now, our family is spread across the world, and so we have a secret group, the Elder Family Group, which has just our family members as members, and our daughter recently had a baby, and so she every day is putting up baby pictures, and that's fun. That's nice. That's and also, let's face it. The Second Kings ministry would have been a lot more difficult without Facebook and YouTube. He could have given that sermon on January 18th, 2015, breaking the silence, and very few people might have seen it if it had not been for YouTube and Facebook. And there are a lot of debates and discussions have taken place on various pages and groups on Facebook that have saved a lot of lives. So Facebook and YouTube, Google have done some very good things in the providence. But now also YouTube is starting more and more to restrict the speech of our second king now. Of course, they at one point stopped the streaming of the February 28th Book of Life registration blessing ceremony, although we were able to stream it over another YouTube channel. But probably, in the transition, there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know where to go, so probably fewer people were able to participate in that ceremony online than would have otherwise. Of course, they were able to participate by April 9th and still take part in that first ceremony. And by the way, even now you can do that blessing through the video. If you were to do the blessing today, it's just that you'll be in the second group, all right? So. And the theological difference between the first and second is none, just that you kind of have, bragging rights to being in the first. That's basically what it's about. So don't worry. Go ahead and do it, all right? Don't think that you've missed out, that you're never going to be able to have this blessing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Everybody's going to get that blessing. So please, if you have the opportunity to do it today, do it today or anytime. And then at some point there will be another big blessing here or someplace where we can accommodate the people who want to attend. So anyway, point is that Facebook and Google have done good things, but now they're also doing bad things by restricting speech. And I just wonder how would we deal with the issue of speech in the under Chonyugo, because even bad people have the right to free speech.
Yeah. Well, this article is interesting. It's talking about violence versus hate speech. And, of course, there's a gray line there separating the two. But the king's language would clearly be and has been declared hate speech by the what's that group?
The SPLC.
The SPLC. But he doesn't advocate violence.
Right.
So I think the king is a very good example of what we're talking about here. He has controversial speech. He's making people think, and it's a debate of ideas, but he's not promoting violent action. Is there a place for Facebook to shut down people who are talking about violent action? Certainly not for people who are just expressing their ideas in the free exchange of ideas. I think that is perhaps a defining line.
Well, in Chonyugu, people, of course, have peace police, peace militia, so be much better equipped to deal with violent action. And so that even if someone uses Facebook or a platform like that to call for violent action, when the action actually takes place, it can be put down perhaps more quickly. Much more quickly. So that's one thing. So the violent speech is not nearly as much of a threat as it would be today, I suppose. And people who do a violent action or want to do violent action would be aware of this, and so they may be less inclined to commit violent acts as well.
And the real violence really happens with governments.
Yes.
The violence that actually occurs through citizens is dwarfed by the violence that governments commit. And even this a potential war in Syria that could lead to a world war is a good example of that. I mean, if the government is going to be involved or Facebook's going to be involved in limiting violent speech, let's start with governments.
Yes, to that. Okay, we don't have too much time. We have a half hour left, so let's go to let's see. Of course, the president. I think this whole Mueller thing is. I think this one may be designed to distract him from, at a time when he has to make this very, very important decision about Syria. Don't you think? Don't you get that kind of impression that the timing of things happening is just too coincidental? Anyway, of course, his personal attorney's office was raided, and so now Trump is very angry about that.
I'm sure the Never Trumpers are saying he's involved in the Syria conflict just to distract people from that government raid.
Well, I would put it a little bit differently. I would say that this government raid was designed to distract the president at a time when he has to make considered decisions about Syria, where he needs to be able to sit back and calmly look at the evidence and calmly look at reports and think clearly. He's being distracted by this thing that has really gotten his emotions riled up, and I just wonder if that was by design. Also, Comey is about to put his book out in comparing the president to a mob boss. And Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz, who is also kind of a lefty, but saying that Cohen raid is unconstitutional. And yeah, this is something that we may all have to worry about.
The unlawful search and seizure of... there's questions around that.
Yes, there is. What about attorney-client privilege? This is kind of think
right.
This is something that we need to all be worried about, how the Bill of Rights, not just the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, all sorts of amendments are being undermined right now by forces that seem to be prepared to remove president at any cost, including undermining the constitutional rule of the United States.
Again, this is the power of government, the force of government, that people are intimidated into going against the Constitution. This is a concern for everybody.
I'm reminded of a line from A Man for All Seasons. I'm trying to find it. Anyway, let's continue. I can't. There was a line that relates to this. Let's see. Border battle. California awaits Governor Brown's National Guard call. Someone was calling California a rogue state. May not be too far from the truth. European Commission raids Fox headquarters in London. Stakes high for Los Angeles DA. Weinstein sexual assault prosecution would be case of the century. Are we still going on about that? Update 3 dead 100 with a severe bleeding with a synthetic pot. Crazy in the USA. Man stabs the boss as he's being fired. TV reporter punched in face by stranger. Journalist attacks a competitor at MLB Major League Baseball game. Actor busted for bomb threat at Amtrak. Academics warn college students going off the rails. Well, got news for you. They've been off the rails for some time. TSA is screening snacks. And so basically that's under the heading Crazy in USA. Robots learning to conduct own experiments. Crime predicting AI about to roll out. Pre-crime. TV wakes up to power of old people and Generation Viagra. I'm sure we have no idea what that's about. Massive tremor on the way. Series of quakes shake California and Alaska. U.S. emergency alert system may not be secure, researchers find. Lawmakers want to ban energy drink sales to South Carolina teens. Trans sex robots in mass demand. Former Playboy bunny becomes oldest lingerie model at 83. Oh, I guess good for her, I guess. Austin named best city. That's the best city to live in, apparently. What ails America? Answers varies from state to state. How long you live may depend on where you live. Moby op-ed sparks backlash for arguing food stamps shouldn't pay for junk. Food stamps, of course, shouldn't exist at all in the first place. In other words, the government issued food stamps under the Chinese Constitution. Welfare would be done by private organizations. And they could have food stamps. They could have, I suppose, some kind of that kind of an arrangement, I suppose.
But it is a double tragedy because the food stamps are forcibly taken from tax-paying citizens, yes. which is a sin.
Yes.
And then the second sin is that the recipients use this stolen money mm-hmm. to buy food that ultimately destroys their own gene pool mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and costs the taxpayers mm-hmm. double mm-hmm. whenever they acquire diabetes, mm-hmm. heart disease, strokes. Mm-hmm. Then they have to be taken to the emergency mm-hmm. room. It could be a $100,000 bill that's, again, the taxpayers have to cover. Then long-term care, which taxpayers have to cover. Mm-hmm. So it is a really broken system mm-hmm. From A to Z. So I would, if we're going to have this insane policy of giving food stamps, which, again, there might be a call for that, and like you say, it could be done by private charities, mm-hmm. Then I agree. It should be to purchase rice and beans and fruits and vegetables mm-hmm. rather than Twinkies, which will ultimately bring down, will create a larger bill down the road.
Or soft drinks, or maybe, I don't know about soft drink, but
soft drinks, that's poison.
Yeah,
it's pure poison. Yes. And I've been in grocery store lines. I'm sure we all have. And somebody has food stamps, and their entire cart is filled with processed foods. This is not going to help their family. And of course, they don't know. A lot of times, there's a huge amount of ignorance mm-hmm. as to how detrimental processed foods are for health. But there has to be, the whole system has to be realigned for sure.
In A Man for All Seasons, there's a scene where Thomas More talks about the necessity of giving the devil the benefit of the law. And he points out that, I won't go through this, but he points out that if you violate the laws, if you cut down all the laws in order to catch the devil, then when the devil turns on you, what are you going to defend yourself with? So right now, I think there are people who are basically doing what Thomas More, or actually the author of Robert Bolt, as the author of Man for All Seasons, warns against. That is to cut down all the laws in order to get to Trump. Mm-hmm. And they're not only, I don't know if they'll get to Trump or not. They may, but they're certainly destroying the laws of the United States, the constitutional guarantees of the United States, and they will, I think, find later on that they've made a huge mistakes.
Well, it sets a precedent for future.
Yeah, because the Republicans can do the same. The Republicans will do the same. That's how it works. That's how it works. Yep. Let's see. No, nothing new right now. I really keep checking back on Syria because I'm afraid, what may be transpiring, but nothing new. Well,
that was quite a extreme tweet by the president.
Yes, it was,
just 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. That missiles are coming.
Russia is not a small country.
Yeah, Russia. Yeah,
it's a pretty serious.
Tweeting against China is one thing. Yeah. But to say, for the President of the United States to tweet, missiles are coming,
that's pretty serious.
Come on.
Yeah, like, really, this is Syria, come on. But wars have been started for much lesser reasons in the past, so it's really no joke.
All we need now is a tweet from Putin saying, bring it on.
And just a few months ago, we were kind of friends with Russia.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. Trump, before his election, was saying we need to be friends with Russia. We need to get along with Russia.
I like Putin. He's a good man.
I like Putin, yeah. But then, and we saw that if Hillary Clinton became president, she was likely to go to war with Russia. We saw that, and that was one of the reasons that we supported Trump.
Exactly.
Now things are transpiring as if Hillary Clinton were president. And so you just wonder, what is going on? The president seems to be made himself vulnerable to some kind of manipulation.
He's surrounded himself with people who love war, who support war.
Bolton is top of the, I would say, suspect list, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
John Bolton.
Mattis, certainly.
Who, by the way, his first day at work was Monday.
Right. Well, the stage is set.
And he may start a war within the first week after he gets into office.
And the omnibus passing has funded the military-industrial complex in a huge way.
$700 billion, yes.
That's a huge amount of money, $700 billion.
Of course, not all that's going to rain down on them at once. But they have that money now that they can spend. Yes.
And a lot of war is unfortunately it's the rebuilding. It's the rebuilding of nations once they've been destroyed.
Yes.
That's the dark side of war. That Syria certainly will have to be rebuilt, just like Iraq is being rebuilt.
Well, yeah, and that's another place that we can argue whether the United States should be involved in that kind of nation building. I think a lot of people would say that we shouldn't have been involved there in the first place. But even if you win the war, get out and let the chips fall where they will. That's what's happening anyway. On Breitbart this morning, Zuckerberg confirms Facebook is working with Robert Mueller's investigation.
What a frickin' nightmare.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Report AG Sessions freezes aid program for illegal migrants. Wait a second, I thought illegal migrants weren't able to take advantage of social welfare in the United States. Turns out that's not the case, as we suspected. Yeah. As we knew, actually. And Attorney General Sessions is temporarily shutting down a taxpayer-funded advice service for the huge numbers of illegal immigrants who drive down blue-collar wages throughout the United States, according to the Washington Post. The program, dubbed the Legal Orientation Program, paid various left-wing groups to provide immigration court advice to migrants, according to the Washington Post. The program helped roughly 53,000 migrants during 2017, the Post said. The shutdown spotlights the administration's efforts to reform the nation's business-oriented immigration system, which annually delivers at least 1 million additional cheap workers and taxpayer-aided consumers to businesses and up to 1 million government-dependent voters to the Democratic Party. Overall, the nation's migration policy shifts at least $500 billion per year from young Americans up to investors, employers, real estate owners, and migration industry progressives. Migration advocates, including immigration lawyers who sell slices of American citizenship, quickly showed their resentment about the loss of taxpayer subsidy, which has been run by the huge Vera Institute of Justice since 2005. According to the Washington Post, this is a blatant attempt by the administration to strip detained immigrants of even the pretense of due process rights, said Mary Meg McCarthy, executive director of the National Immigration Justice Center, one of the organizations that offers the legal services with Vera. At least 600,000 migrants have applied for asylum via the clogged immigration court system, and roughly 1 million migrants have received final orders of deportation, but have not yet been sent home. Migration industry officials refer to migrants as immigrants as if they have already been approved for legal immigration by Americans. So let's see. A 2008 report on the program suggests it helped many migrants win green cards. Grant rates for unrepresented LOP participants who received more intensive levels of service were 5 times those of participants who received group orientations alone. Okay, so that Sessions has shut down the funding for that. Why did it take them so long?
Yeah, Sessions has gone off to a slow start.
Yeah. Push to politicize impeachment may backfire for Democrats in midterms. Maybe so. By the way, I got a notice on my Facebook this morning about registering to vote. People might want to check that. It was encouraging. Facebook, I think it thinks that it is encouraging young people to register to vote. And that may be true, but also people in our age group sometimes. Actually, kids are going to Instagram these days, so it may backfire on them. It may be us old fogies who are still on Facebook who are registering to vote and will actually go to the polls on May 15th, Pennsylvania primary, May 15th. Anyway, check that out. Yeah.
Now, if I'm a registered independent now, how long does it take to get back if I wanted to switch to Republican so I could?
I think 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
And then it's instantly changed.
Yeah, we can do it during the break.
Okay, let's do that. I'll do that.
Yeah, independents cannot vote in the primary.
I know. That was my shock last time when I wanted to go and do the primary.
Yeah.
I was not allowed. They turned me away.
Oh, they turned you away. I used to live in Virginia. And in Virginia, you do not declare a party affiliation. And so
anybody can go in.
You can only vote in one primary, supposedly.
Okay.
Supposedly.
Right. Yeah.
You can only vote in one. You can only vote in either Republican primary or Democratic primary in a given election cycle. But anybody can go to whatever primary they want to vote in. Yeah, in Virginia, I think that's probably still the law. That would be a good law to have in Pennsylvania too. I think. Of course, the problem is then you get Democrats voting in the Republican primary for the candidate that they most want to go against their Democratic candidate.
Right.
So they will vote for the weakest Republican candidate. That is one problem that produces. Let's see. Facebook CEO testifies before Congress. Facebook shares soar. So apparently Zuckerberg became much richer during his testimony. Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Koch brothers, Bezos, corporate elites determined to flood U.S. with foreigners. That seems to be the strategy. Yeah. We were concerned about this caravan of 1,500. 1,500 is nothing. Nothing. I don't know why people were so worried about that, and why people were getting Trump's they were getting under Trump's skin by playing that up. There was an article about that on Facebook yesterday. It looks like he's on Drudge Report yesterday. It looks like he's taking it down. But their caravan now is saying that everybody's going to America. They're doing their best to get under Trump's skin. Ted Cruz grills Zuckerberg on Facebook censorship. Who moderates your moderators? Good question. Yeah. Facebook has dozens of ex-Obama and ex-Hillary staffers in senior positions.
Mm-hmm. This is it. This is the theology, philosophy of Facebook. It's not middle of the road America.
Nolte says a Facebook deep state MSM complex threatens 3 amendments. I can think of the first, second, and fourth, but I imagine there are others as well. Report Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey personally chooses accounts to be banned. So if he had competitors, that wouldn't be a problem so much. But the problem is that these people don't have competitors.
They can't even. The competitors wouldn't be able to advertise on Facebook.
Yes.
To grow their following, they'd have to figure out another way, and it's, it's kind of a monolithic. And when you look at all the top CEOs of these social media outlets, they're all of the same political persuasion.
Yes, and that too. Is that a coincidence?
Why is that?
We
got to get conservatives more involved in social media.
Well, I don't think that's the issue. I think it's interesting that only people with that political persuasion have been successful in this area.
Some collusion, perhaps.
Yeah, collusion. Somebody working behind the scenes to help people with particular political persuasions succeed in this area.
But there are a lot of successful conservative business people.
Yes.
But
not in this area.
Not in this area.
Yeah. So that again suggests that there's something going on. Yeah. Why is it that conservatives could be successful in every other area, but not this area? But weaning people from social media, I think, is what needs to be done. There was a time when we didn't have social media and we got along quite well.
Some would say better.
Better, yes.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I think.
You think it's here to stay?
I think it's here to stay, and I think technologies are going to continue to evolve. I know some people are wishing and hoping for an EMP to bring us back to this, 1700s, and we can farm again. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think, but I do think people, seek freedom. Our innate desire is freedom, and the Constitution is our backbone of this country. And I believe that if people will find alternatives to these liberal platforms and go to a more balanced freedom of speech platforms, if they emerge.
President Trump has tweeted again, our relationship with Russia is worse now than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War. There is no reason for this. Russia needs us to help with their economy, something that would be very easy to do, and we need all nations to work together. Stop the arms race? ?
That's kind of a disjointed tweet.
Sometimes I wonder if, the president actually composes all of his tweets. Or
you think he's got a tweet team?
Or sometimes I wonder if Ivanka's doing it.
No, they're so abrupt. I think
Maybe
they
Ivanka
come
has
from
his
Donald.
Password. I don't know.
I think the tweets are sometimes so extreme. I think they got to come from Donald.
Some of them, yes, definitely. But between 55 minutes ago and 14 minutes ago, in those 41 minutes, maybe he thought about that original tweet and thought, maybe I better cool things down. Our relationship with Russia is worse now than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War. There is no reason for this. So now he's being conciliatory. Russia needs us to help with their economy, something that would be very easy to do, and we need all nations to work together. Stop the arms race? ? I hope he will take another step back, and say, wait a second, what evidence do I have that the Syrian government actually did this?
Right.
What evidence do I have?
This is where Ivanka might come in and hopefully have that kind of influence over him, perhaps.
Do you think so?
Maybe.
Kushner? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe Kushner's I don't know. He may actually be on the opposite side. I'm not sure.
You see this college senior stands by her decision to pose with gun in her waistband?
I think we looked at that yesterday.
Did you? Okay.
Oh, did we? I'm not sure. I think it was out yesterday anyway. Yeah, she's quite a good-looking young lady, and she looks even better with that gun in her waistband there, and pulling up her Women for Trump T-shirt. And some people criticized her for not having a holster, but she tweeted back that apparently she does have one. It is in a holster.
Okay.
But it's in a belly band, I guess, or whatever you call it there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that you can't see the holster. So, but she has a figure that she can wear a holster and people will not know it. So that's she obviously been.
Well, she's also a more likely victim of some brutal attack. So it's good that she's armed.
Yes, it is good that she's armed. I'm sure her parents are very proud of her. She's standing up for that quite recently, and apparently she shot that photo outside of a museum that has a no guns policy. So some people are a little bit irritated by that, but maybe that was on purpose. Maybe she was trying to bring attention to the fact that there is this wrong policy there. Excuse me.
Another person for the King's Report, Lourdes. If you're listening, she'd be a good guest.
Okay. everybody's focusing on this thing with Zuckerberg at Congress, and so there's not much else in the news this morning. And I'm not all that interested in what he. I mean, we know what he's going to say. We know they're going to suck up to him. So it just simply underlines what we've already known, that the masters of the universe are doing their thing, or they're controlling the universe.
Yep, they are the gods.
Controlling speech.
Idol worshippers.
Yep. Scientists discover a method of removing genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. Sounds like good, but hope it doesn't create side effects and unintended consequences. 20 years later, find out, but it kills you. And big tech-funded Senator Cantwell uses Zuckerberg hearing to attack Peter Thiel's Palantir. Internet privacy group organizers delete Facebook protests for hearings. Some people are deleting Facebook. That's sometimes tempting, but as I said, it's a useful communication tool. Yeah. Even Breitbart is just focused on Facebook this morning. Washington Times, secret empires, shocking, startling, stunning, sickening. Let's look at the Washington Times opinion of that book. We've already covered this book by Clinton Cash or Peter Schweitzer, a few times before, but Washington Times, I guess, has its article out on this book. The Washington Times' Fred J. Eckert reviews the new book, Secret Empires, How American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Family and Friends by Government Accountability Institute President and Breitbart Senior Editor-at-Large Peter Schweitzer. And this is the Washington Times review. The astonishing, widespread, massive corruption of some of the biggest names in American politics that Peter Schweitzer reveals in his new blockbuster expose is shocking, startling, stunning, and sickening. Secret Empires, How the American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Family and Friends is an insightful and extraordinarily consequential book that should ignite a national uproar. Don't hold your breath. Our national media can be expected to do all in its power to suppress the possibility of any uproar, even when the corruption is this vast. It's what they're best at, covering up their own malfeasance and protecting politicians with whose ideology they've allied themselves. One of the biggest scandals in American history was swirling around us. Leading U.S. government figures were embracing corruption. Foreign governments were colluding with American sleazes to hurt our country. Family and friends of these key political figures conspired as middlemen between foreign interests seeking influence and those enormously influential U.S. government officials. And it gives a link to the Washington Times review. This sounds like a good book to take a look at. Okay, you can go to the Washington Times and read the full review on that. We don't have much time left, so let's make sure there's nothing else that we need to cover this morning. Was Zuckerberg's testimony just one day yesterday? I think it's continuing, isn't it? A few other appearances this week. Of course, he'll keep saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he's not under oath. He's not under oath. They say that he has a legal responsibility to tell the truth. But we don't know. But I'm really not all that interested in that. It's basically a political theater is what it is. They bring these guys in and they show, we beat him up, we beat him up. Mm-hmm. Other people making sure that the Facebook money keeps flowing to their re-election campaigns. Mm-hmm. So it's really not so consequential. Probably one of the biggest stories coming out of that is that AI will continue to increase its role in monitoring hate speech. Yes. And AI is all programmed by human beings. Yes. So we'll be saying, approve my post, Hal. I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that. I think you know as well as I do. Why? Yes, Hal is coming to get us all. Yeah, Hal is Alexa, isn't it? Yes. Well, Before Alexa, there was Hal. Yeah. I'm sorry, our generation keeps going back to that movie. That was quite a movie.
It was really quite prophetic, wasn't it?
Yes, it was quite prophetic. 1969, I think, 68, 69.
And they thought 1984 was coming right around the corner.
Yes, 2000. Well, it was 2001, A Space Odyssey. So but already 2001 was 17 years ago. And fortunately, we've staved off Hal for 17 years, but he's coming. He's coming.
He's coming to a home near you.
He's coming.
A computer near you.
Yes, he's coming to what is it called? MSM near you. Okay, we're at the 8 o'clock hour now. Let's hope that we can get through another day without war in Syria. And we'll see you. This is Saturday, right? Okay, so...
No, today's Wednesday.
No, today's Wednesday. That's right. Okay, I keep getting these things mixed up. That's good because we're not quite yet prepared for Monday.
Is Korean service happening today? Have you heard?
I have not heard.
You have not heard, okay.
Yes, I have not heard.
The king is still nursing his wound to the chest?
Yes, and I, quite frankly, my personal desire, if I had the power to decide... If I were his doctor, even being his doctor is not much use, but I would rather see him stay stay at home today because I would like to see him recover as quickly as possible. And I think he tends to push himself, like someone else we know did and
does.
True Father always pushed himself beyond his physical limitations as well. But I think he would probably recover faster if he doesn't come to the church today. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion, my considered medical opinion. I don't know if he's listening right now. Let's go off the air before we get ourselves in any further trouble. Thank you very much for listening, watching today, and please pray for President Trump that he can be wise in his decisions and considered in his decisions, and that he will look at the evidence and think about motivations. Think about why suddenly these things are happening just when he was about to pull us out of Syria. Let's hope that question can be embedded in his mind. All right? Thank you, and God bless Godspeed, and may his kingdom come.
Adieu.